Hi boys and girls, Mrs. Perez is here with another book for you today. This one's called Wiggling Worms at Work, and it's written by Wendy Pfeffer and illustrated by Steve Jenkins. Did you know that worms are working? Yeah, right now. Who would have even thought? As we're riding our bikes or running on the playground, the worms are deep under the soil, hard at work. Yeah, this book has a lot of information about worms and how they are helpful to us. So be listening for all these great things that you learn about worms so that we can make a circle map at the end. All right, hey? Wiggling worms at work. Down in the ground, under your feet, thousands of worms wiggle around flower bulbs and tunnel under trees. They twist and turn, eating almost anything in their way. These wiggling worms are at work. And you can see their tunnels and the roots of the plants. Farmers plow their fields to loosen the soil. Crumbly soil lets the roots of plants spread out and grow. Worms also loosen the soil as they wiggle along. They are called nature's plows. As worms twist and turn, they push aside loose soil. This creates tunnels. Air flows along those tunnels. Rainwater trickles down. Roots drink it up. Moist ground helps plants grow better. So that's one way they help. They loosen the soil. Worms tunnel in hard-packed soil by swallowing it. The soil goes in the worm's mouth, slides into the crop, then passes down to the gizzard. What's a gizzard? Worms do not have teeth. Mussels, fine grains of sand, and small stones in the gizzard grind up the soil. Worms digest leaf and plant bits that are found in the soil, just as you digest a salad. What's left passes through the worm's body and comes out its tail end in the form of pellets called worm castings. These castings make good plant food. They help fruits and vegetables grow bigger and better. Okay, so the castings, it's their poop. They're poopy. So their castings help the plants to grow. Sometimes worms crawl above ground. When they tunnel back down into the ground, they pull dead leaves and plants down with them. And these plants make the soil better as they rot. Seeds come down too, and some of these seeds send out roots. Seedlings sprout. Worms help new plants begin to grow. Wow, they're like gardeners. They help plant seeds. Worms can wiggle, twist, turn, and even tie themselves into knots because they have no backbones. Their soft bodies are made up of rings or segments. These segments act like the coils of a slinky toy. They let the worm bend. A worm has no legs, but it has 8 bristles under each segment, and they act like little legs. So see, they're kind of just like little hairs, these little bristles. They help the worm move. Strong muscles allow the worm to stretch out its front end. It becomes long and thin, and then the worm fastens its front bristles to the soil, and then the back slinks up, making the worm short and fat. So that's how it moves along. The worm wiggles along, stretching and slinking, stretching and slinking. With all its wiggling, twisting, and turning, it's a wonder a worm knows where it's headed. It has no eyes, no nose, no ears, and hardly any brain at all. But a worm knows what's happening nearby. It feels vibrations on the ground, and it senses this hungry robin. Quickly, the worm slips back into its burrow. Hiding is the only way it can protect itself from enemies. Worms also hide from the sun. They must live in damp soil since they breathe air through their moist skin. In the hot sun, their skins dry up and they can't breathe. Are you learning about worms? Me too. Sometimes worms crawl up to the surface to find food. They select dead and decaying plants to drag back down to their burrows. These plants contain bacteria that worms eat. Healthy plants do not. Worms pick leaves with pointed ends rather than the round ones. Nobody knows why. Worms also eat fungi and mold. Ew, mold? They slurp the hair-like strands of mold the same way that you might slurp strands of spaghetti. Ooh. Worms eat at the entrances of their burrows. Then each worm covers any leftover with plants of the castings. This pile of worm castings is called a midden. It hides the top of the worm's burrow and acts like a door to keep out the bad weather and rain. I didn't know that. In spring, before the weather warms, worms wiggle to the surface to mate. Worms are different from most other animals. Each worm is both male and female, but each one still needs a mate. After mating, each worm crawls back into its burrow. When the weather cools, a ring-like cocoon forms near the head of each worm that has mated. Slowly, the worm begins to move backward. The cocoon inches forward on the worm's body, just as a ring on your finger would move. The cocoon passes over openings in the worm's body, and then up to 30 eggs slip out of the openings and into the cocoon. Oh, so the cocoon will slip off of the worm's body, and then the eggs will be put into the cocoon. In a few minutes, the cocoon slips off the worm's head just as a ring would slip off your finger. The ends of the cocoon close. Inside the cocoon, the eggs are fertilized. Oh, it says eggs in there. In about 3 weeks, the eggs hatch. Out of about 30 eggs, only 3 or 4 wormlets emerge from each cocoon. They look like tiny pieces of cotton thread, less than an inch long, very small. But they're fully developed worms and live completely on their own. They do not need their parents' help. The wormlets inch along, finding bits of dead plants to eat, dragging them to their tunnels and covering any leftovers with their castings. They wiggle underground, loosening the soil and making tunnels. Even tiny wormlets help the soil. So even the babies are helpful. These babies grow fast. In 6 weeks, they are adult worms. In winter, the soil near the surface freezes. The worms plug up their tunnels and move down into the warmer soil. They stay there until the springtime, and then they wiggle up, tunneling, twisting, and turning until they're right under your feet again. Oh, so they hibernate. In the wintertime, they go into the soil and they stay there throughout the winter. Vegetables and flowers grow better. Trees grow bigger. Grass grows greener because there are thousands of wiggling worms at work. That is so cool to know that those tiny little worms are so very helpful for us. All right, think of some things that you learned about worms, and we're going to make a little circle map and chart those. All right? All right, were you thinking about some things you learned about worms? Okay, let's put them on this circle map. All right, so first, where do worms live? Yes, underground. They live underground in what? In the dirt or in the soil, right? So let's write underground. I like that word that you said, underground. And then let's also write soil. Oh, what kind of soil do they like to live in? Do they like to live in dry, hot soil or damp, cool soil? Yes, damp soil. So let's write damp soil. Damp soil. Okay, so they live underground in damp soil. What else do you know about worms? What do they eat? Yeah, pretty much anything, right? They'll eat plants. They eat the soil. They'll even eat garbage. So they eat pretty much anything. So let's say they eat anything. They eat anything. And they even eat mold. They eat anything. All right, what else do you know about worms? Well, they're eating. Do they have teeth? No, they don't. Can you imagine? They don't have any teeth. So let's write no teeth. What else? Do they have any eyes or? No, they can't even see. And they don't have ears either. They can't hear. All right, so let's write no eyes. No eyes. No ears. Do they have a mouth? Yes, they do have a mouth. So let's write, they have a mouth. Mouth. Well, if they don't have eyes or ears, how do they know where they're going? How do they know what's going on around them? Do you remember what it said in the book? Yeah, it said in the book that they feel vibrations. Yeah, if somebody has, like someone's in a car right next to you and they have their radio up super duper duper loud and the bass is going really loud, you can almost feel that music, can't you? You can like feel the vibrations. Feel the vibrations. So they feel vibrations. So let's just write vibrations. Vibrations. So they can't see and they can't hear, but they do feel vibrations. That's how it can sense if there's like a hungry bird up above the ground that wants to eat it, right? What else do you know about worms? How they get around? Yeah, they wiggle, don't they? Let's just write wiggle. So they wiggle. Yeah, they sure do wiggle. What do they make in the ground? They do make tunnels. Yeah, they burrow down in the ground and they make tunnels. And those tunnels allow the air to flow down through, right? And it loosens the soil and it helps flowers and plants to grow, right? And vegetables. So could we say that they're helpful? Yeah, so they make tunnels and they're helpful. Helpful. Wow, we know a lot about worms, don't we? Okay, are there any other things that we know about worms? Does it, do they have their babies live, like puppies? Their babies do what? Yeah, their babies hatch from eggs. So let's say that they lay eggs. So lay eggs. Eggs. You know what? I think that we don't have much more room. So, and I also think that you did an awesome job telling me about things that you learned about worms. So let's go through and review what you said, okay? All right, so this is all about worms. Okay, worms live underground in damp soil. They eat anything, even though they have no teeth. But they do have a mouth, don't they? They have no eyes. They have no ears. They feel, do you remember that big word right there? The yeah, they feel vibrations. Vibrations. They make tunnels. And they're very helpful, aren't they? They wiggle and they lay eggs. Yeah, and I'm sure you learned even more about worms. We just don't have any room to put it all down there. But you can certainly go and tell your family all the stuff that you've learned about worms. And there's really no reason to be afraid of them. They're just helpful. They're just trying to work, right? All right, now you get to work and go tell your friends and family about worms.